I want to thank the Dell family. It's a great family. He is amazing. She is amazing. They've done such a job on that. They put up a lot of money too. Put up $6.25 billion. That's somebody. And he started making computers on his bed in college and selling them because they were better than other computers. And I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I did it and I just never stopped. It just kept going. So go out and buy a Dell. They're great.
Meet computers on his bed. Go buy one. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. That should never be normal. But there's a reason Donald Trump strung together those nonsensical words and near sentences. Donald Trump telling people to, quote, go out and buy one, a Dell computer. It's because it's a company that he's personally invested in to the tune of at least $1 million. And while he's using his office, the office of the American presidency, to urge you to, quote, go out and buy one, this thing that he made on his bed, to buy from his preferred companies, the federal government, which he sits atop, is simultaneously handing companies like Dell massive government contracts. Yesterday, 19 days after Donald Trump urged cash-strapped and stressed-out Americans to buy his political patrons' computers, the federal government inked a nearly $10 billion with a B dollar contract with, wait for it, Dell. Of that, CNBC reports this, quote, the Department of Defense announced a 5-year, roughly $9.7 billion deal with Dell to provide a suite of software to the U.S. military. It comes after Michael Dell, the founder and CEO of Dell Technologies, pledged $6.25 billion, which Trump mentioned there, to fund investment accounts for children known as Trump accounts. A Navy spokesperson told reporters this, quote, the vendors were all evaluated based on competition, sure, an overall chain of value to the department. Going through the process of evaluation, they came out on top. They just happened to come out on top, I guess. The timing seems suspicious to you. Just wait, there's more. Forbes reports that back in February, Donald Trump purchased between $1 and $5 million in Dell stock. As of Tuesday, when Forbes compiled the numbers, that stock had gone up by 142%. With a median value gain of $4.3 million. They ranked it the #1 best stock trade that Donald Trump made. Now, that number is likely to get bigger, to rise. Dell stock has gone up more than 4% since the Pentagon announced a deal with Dell, which came after Trump told everyone to, quote, go out and buy a Dell computer, the one that he made, quote, on his bed. I'm sure it was in his paper that he made it out of his bedroom, but we'll save that for another day. Trump is the only president in modern history who's done this, who's traded like this. Every president since Gerald Ford has placed their assets in a blind trust to avoid even the appearance of corruption. Every president until Donald Trump. The Trump Organization says that outside brokerage firms make the trades with no involvement from Donald Trump, his family, or the organization. Okay, so it's a coincidence that he tells the country to go out and buy the computers? Okay. While Trump allies are being awarded contracts that benefit Donald Trump personally and financially, Americans, on the other hand, are facing more and more pressure from the Trump economy. Trump's war with Iran is jacking up yet another measure of inflation. On that, the New York Times reports this, quote, a measure of inflation closely watched by the Federal Reserve accelerated in April to a 3-year high. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Index rose 3.8% from the same time last year. It was the fastest annual pace since May of 2023, when the Fed was in the midst of raising rates to tame a burst of inflation that had emerged in the wake of the pandemic. A measure of underlying inflation that strips out volatile food and energy prices also notched a multi-year high. That measure, core inflation, increased at the annual pace of 3.3%, the fastest it has risen since November of 2023. Donald Trump continuing to brazenly and publicly enrich himself While the American people can barely afford groceries and gas, is where we begin the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Norm Eisen is back with us. He served as special counsel for ethics and government reform in the White House under President Barack Obama and was co-counsel for the House Judiciary Committee during the first impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. He's now a senior fellow at Brookings and the executive chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund. Also joining us, Brendan Ballou. He's the founder of the Public Integrity Project and a former special counsel in the Department of Justice. Also joining us, political analyst, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, is here. He's with me at the table for the whole hour. I start with you.
This is wild. The Dell story is the kind of story I was thinking about this when I was reading it yesterday. That it's kind of lame to do this at this point. But if you imagine any other politician, one of our former bosses or a Democrat, so Joe Biden or Barack Obama, having a corruption story at this level, it is the front page of the New York Times. It's leading the nightly news. People are talking about it for weeks. There are investigations. There are questions about it at the White House briefing. There are questions about it at the Hill. We're talking about it right now, but I feel like this Dell story is somewhat getting lost amidst a wash of all the other corruption, which is kind of the real story, that the scale of his corruption is so great, it's very hard to get your arms around. And that's not even so much a media criticism, it's just an analysis of just how outrageous and over the top that the corruption is. I mean, the Dell story, for Trump to have purchased this, my colleague Joe Perticone wrote about this at the Bulwark. The amount of stock trades he made in the first 3 months this year, the total amount of money, was more
3,700 trades.
Yeah, and the number was some number in the 8 figures. It was
there was so many trades. I don't trade, but it was so many that they looked automated. It looked like a computer had made them because it seemed like more than people that trade would make.
Or maybe they just have a team of guys in Mar-a-Lago who are just doing this in the Uday and Qusay drawing room. I don't know how they're doing it, but it was more money and more trades than all of Congress in the Senate. Right? There's this big conversation happening about how, we should have the Stock Trade Act, we should ban trades for Congress, and I don't care. That seems like the right thing to do. All this conversation about Nancy Pelosi, 12 months, 535 members, the entire year of 2025, they did less in total than Donald Trump did in the first 3 months of this year. So that's the scale of his investing. And then you have this example where you have millions being made on a company that he is at the White House promoting, and then that the government provides a multi-billion-dollar contract to. It's not even subtle. It's nothing that's subtle. There's another story out today from ProPublica. Some other company got a defense contract that Don Jr. is on the board of, and what ProPublica reported is they have 2 sources saying that the White House called, and we know this is happening, but it's good to have a source that's saying that this happened. The White House called the Department of War and said, hey, you got to do this contract, and it's for a company that Don Jr. is invested in. What they are doing is so far beyond. Think about all of the time spent on Pelosi and the Pelosi tracker, and this is not to endorse, I don't know exactly what was happening there, anything that she did with investments. The scale of this is so far beyond that it's really kind of challenging to contextualize it for people.
Well, Trump helps us, right, Norm? I mean, Trump standing in the Rose Garden saying Dell. And Trump, who multiple news outlets have reported, simply writes things on things that are printed out for him. So I'm not sure he's the best Consumer Reports evaluator of any computer, but whatever. Trump says this about Dell Computers. Quote, they, Dell, have done such a great job. He made computers on his bed. That's as close as Trump is going to come to a personal endorsement of a computer. It happens in the Rose Garden. They are acting, and I guess this is in their defense what the Republicans in Congress have ushered in. They're acting with impunity to literally smash and grab taxpayer dollars, shove them into their own coffers because the Republicans in Congress have allowed them to.
That's right, Nicole. When I was in the White House and we would have an issue, I would regularly get calls from Democratic senators who would say, look, I've got to speak out about this. The complete abdication where you don't have any meaningful legislative oversight. They've given up their power to deal with this. Is like nothing we've ever seen in the history of our country. It really harkens to other authoritarian regimes where you have this kind of naked run on the bank by the leaders. And it's not just that the American people hate corruption, and they do. They list it as a top issue in poll after poll. It's that this is a Trump tax that all of us are paying. When government is broken in this way, it directly drives up the costs for the American people. And I think you're going to see that this administration and its cronies and allies pay a very steep price for this. When at the Contrarian, we did our latest list of the top 10 Trump corruption scandals, the stock trades were only number 4. The challenge was, how do you pick just 10? And I do think they break through, whether it's financial corruption, like the Dell trade that we're talking about, or whether it is the corruption of the rule of law that we're seeing over and over again. The drumbeat of it is loud. People are noticing, and there'll be a stiff price to pay, including because we're feeling it in our pocketbooks.